Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Two Matts and a Jeff podcast. I'm Matt Moyer, joined as always with my brother Jeff Moyer and Matt Bannon. We're just some middle-aged guys talking sports and all things sports. I want to remind everyone to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Instagram and on Facebook, Two Matts and a Jeff podcast. So today, we're changing things up, and we're going to be talking about our all-time greatest sports movies. So this is all going to be about movies. So before we jump into it a little bit, guys, you know, when I think about a great sports movie, I think about a couple of things. Of course, sports has to play a pretty central role in the movie. Yeah. So that's got to be there. I think of movies that have to have some great quotes. What are some things that you're going to quote from that movie? Things that when you say it, everybody knows the movie. They know what you're talking about. I think that makes a great movie, and there's a lot of great sports movies that have those. I'm going to want to see some great actors in the movie. And when the sports part are on, whatever percentage of the movie is that, I want to see some real sports. Like, I don't want to see those movies where the basketball court looks like it's the size of a half court. You know, I want to see something that looks like some realistic sports action. I think that matters in a sports movie. And, of course, there's got to be a story to it. Some of these sports movies are basically going to be about the sport, but some are going to be about the guy or the girl or the people. So there has to be a compelling story to that. So that's kind of what I think you look at for some great sports movies. Matt, we're going to let you get started. You get to go first. What do you got? We'll start with our top five like we usually do and go from there.
Yeah, all right. So at five for me is a movie called The Natural. I'm not sure it makes people's lists or whatever, but for me, it's just, again, and one of the things that you didn't mention, Matt, that I thought of when I made my list is if it's on. Now, a lot of these movies are not current, obviously. So if it's on TV or whatever, I'm flipping to it, I'm stuck. I may have something to do, someplace to go, and I'm stuck. I have to watch to the end, whether I'm picking it up with 10 minutes left or 2 hours left or whatever.
That's a great point, Matt, because these are movies that when you come to them, you can start watching no matter where. So it's an excellent, and it was a part of my criteria that I should have mentioned. That's great. I'm going to tell you that when I get to The Natural, I keep on going.
Yeah. Yep. So The Natural for me, it's if you've ever seen it, if you haven't seen it, watch it. But it's a little bit of surreal. You have to suspend some belief, obviously, because at one point, if you end up watching it, Robert Redford is the main character, and it's set back in the 50s maybe or so. I think
I'm going to say it's earlier in the 50s.
Probably
30s and 40s. You know,
so,
Roy Hobbs.
Yeah, The Natural. He knocks the cover off the baseball, literally. Like they're running around. Look at they have the hide, they have the string, they can't find the core, that type of thing. For me, one of the main scenes in that movie is when he becomes a wonder when he starts off, and then he goes into a huge slump, and they go to Chicago for a series. He plays for the New York. Oh my God, that's awful.
I do not remember the name.
See, that's awful. It's my five movie.
He's not making my list, so you know.
Anyway, he plays for the New York team, and they go to Chicago for a series. And he hits a home run where he hits the top of the scoreboard, the clock, and shatters it. And it's one of those scenes where I know that's coming up, and I just blast the volume because the music, the volume, the audio, and everything makes that scene for me. I just get even I've watched it 100 times, and I still get goosebumps on that scene or whatever. So The Natural's at 5 for me or whatever. My 4, who's probably also may not on be either of your lists, is a movie called Love and Basketball. There might not be as much basketball in it. That may be one reason. It's more on the love side or whatever. But for me, like here's something I wrote a couple quotes from it. So it's a movie, two kids, and they meet each other as they're growing up, and they sort of are romantically involved, but then they're not, and they end up going to high school together and then to college together and everything. And Omar Epps. And I don't know if it's Sanaa Lathan. I believe that's how you pronounce her name. So a couple quotes I wrote down from the movie is where Sanaa Lathan's character is at USC playing basketball, and the coach says, she asks the coach, "Why are you always riding me?" And the coach says, "Do you think I go horse for someone with no potential?" And that sticks with me because obviously I was a player that I got yelled at, and I was like, didn't like, why are you yelling at me or whatever? Well, you're going to be an integral part. You may not be a star, but I need you. So that stuck with me. And then she said, when I don't yell at you, that's when you worry. But for me, one of the things with Love and Basketball is this, like, the soundtrack. The music in the movie is as much of part of the movie as the movie itself. Songs like Candy Girl, It Takes Two, Sweet Thing, which is an older 70s music thing, and Love and Happiness. There's even other ones. There's Just Got Paid. These are songs from, some of the songs are from around the time when the movie was
I think
set.
that's really going Siskel and Ebert on us here, man.
Yeah.
I mean, he's really got some.
Yeah, well, obviously this is a movie where I love this movie. And to be honest with you, I was going to have it higher, but the movies that are ahead of it, I couldn't. So anyhow, Love and Basketball is probably not on your list, but it's number 4 for me. For me, number 3, and maybe on your list and may not be this high, is a movie called A League of Their Own, which is about women's baseball back when World War II happened. One of the candy bar guys, O. Henry or whatever.
No, it's not O. Henry. It's Harvey. The Harvey
Bar.
Now I don't know if that's the
real
the real
bar.
thing. It might have been really the O. Henry guy in real life,
Right.
and they changed it for the movie to the Harvey because it's Mr. Harvey and the Harvey Bar. But yes,
But it's based on a real league.
based on real life.
Real life. And obviously the quote from that movie, like everyone knows, is "There's no crying in baseball." It's a scene where oh my goodness, played in Jimmy Dugan is Tom Hanks, and a girl comes in for making an error from the outfield, and he gets all over her, and she starts crying, and he just yells, "There's no crying in baseball." Let's see what else I have in that. Oh, and another scene in that movie is when the star player played by oh my God,
Gina Davis.
Gina Davis, thank you, plays Dottie Henson, the star player on the team. She decides once her husband comes back from the war that she's going to just stop playing, and they're in the playoffs, I think, and she decides she's going to stop.
They're
playing.
in the World Series.
The World Series, and she decides she's going to stop playing. And the line that Tom Hanks says to her is, she says, "It just got too difficult," and Tom Hanks' line to her is, "The hard is what makes it great," or something like that. And that's to me, that's
of course
rings
it's
so
hard.
true.
It's supposed to be hard. It's the hard that makes it great. Yes.
Right. So League of Their Own is that's another one where I'm stuck and I'm watching it, whatever. Now my number 2 is another baseball movie, Bull Durham. I'm not sure if that's on your list or where it would be. For me, that's right around my wheelhouse of when, I just had graduated high school, maybe a little later than there, and that was like, to me, there's so many quotes from that movie that you could say or whatever. My favorite scene from that movie, it's a movie about minor league baseball, the Durham Bulls. Kevin Costner's in it, Susan Sarandon, Tim Robbins.
A young Tim
Robbins as Nuke LaLoosh.
Yes.
One of the greatest nicknames in all of sports movies, Nuke LaLoosh. But there's a scene in this movie where Nuke LaLoosh is on the mound. He's struggling. Crash Davis is played by
Kevin Costner.
Kevin Costner, comes out to the mound for a mound visit. The whole infield comes together, and they start talking about everything. And then they can't figure out, they're just talking, and the manager sends a pitching coach out, and he gets to the mound and says, "Guys, what's going on?" And Kevin Costner goes into a speech where he says, "We're dealing with a lot of things here. We're trying to figure out what to get." One shortstop's getting married. Trying to figure out what to get this guy and the fiance for a wedding gift. The first baseman needs to take a curse off his glove. We need a live chicken or whatever. Just lots of things. And the pitching coach says, okay, well, Candlestick's make a nice gift. Let's get 2. And he just takes off or whatever. There's just so many scenes in that movie. That's just another movie where I just get stuck and love watching it. And my number 1, and I don't know where this would be on your guys' list, I'm assuming it's on your list, is Hoosiers. Because it's just, basketball is my sport, even though if you're watching, I'm wearing a Baseball Hall of Fame shirt because there was a lot of baseball movies on my list. But Hoosiers to me is just the ultimate sports movie. There is some other elements in it, a little bit romantic thing. So if you don't know Hoosiers, Gene Hackman plays a coach who was on the outs and got suspended because he actually from a college, Ithaca College, and punched a player. It's based on a true story. And finds a second chance in rural Indiana, which is Hoosier land, basketball
in the
land.
50s, in the middle of nowhere in the 50s, which, for the kids out there, it's not like today where you can go watch basketball everywhere and this and that. When you're out in Podunk, Indiana in the 50s, you're in the middle of nowhere.
And
there's
all they
no
cared
internet
about
to
was
research
basketball.
the guy and stuff.
I said that all that town cared about was basketball.
Well, at one point in the movie, Hackman's character says, "My boys know about 3 things in this order: basketball, school, and farming, or farming and school." I think he says, or whatever. So, but yeah, Hoosiers for me. there's more to basketball. The quote I have for that movie is, "There's more to basketball than shooting. There's defense and fundamentals." And you guys know, played with me enough that's huge for me. Let's see. To me, it's about it's an endless story, or a timeless story, I should say. Just team building. He says at one point he's going to break the ponies down, and build them back up,
Right.
or whatever.
I was just saying, it's going to be on my list.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that it's the small town
underdog.
Going against the big time. So I'll say more about it too.
Yeah, you guys can talk about Jimmy
The underdog
Chitwood,
story
Jimmy
is
Chitwood, and all that. Or whatever.
Yes.
So those are my top 5. Obviously, I know you guys are going to have some definitely different things
Yes.
or whatever, but those are my top 5.
There are some movies in
Yes.
your top 5 that I'm
Not
not
even
stopping
on the
on the
list.
dial. They're not on my list at all.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, in talking about and doing movies, for me, out of the 3 of us, I am probably the least of the movie person. And especially to say quotes, I'm not gonna have I don't have quotes, and I don't remember actors' names too many times. So when I started thinking about, okay, we're gonna do the movies, I just started looking things up just to kind of see, what were other people putting on, and I'm kind of kickstarted maybe what I would put on there. And then, again, part of the criteria was also, if it's on, I'm going to put it on. I'm going to watch it. Part of it is obviously the story. Some of it is also just all-time, where they would fall into movies in general. Right. So I have 2 of the same for you for my top 5. My number 5 is not in your top 5. I really loved Major League. When I started looking at different things, I looked at least 6 different top whatever, could have been 100, could have been 75 movie lists, and they came up on a bunch of them. And I just love the Major League. It was with baseball, with all just the different things that came on in there. One little side note I like to mention is that Major League 2, which wasn't as good, but I actually got to go in the movie because it was, believe it or not, filmed in Baltimore, even though they were the Cleveland Indians. They actually filmed it in Baltimore, so I was able to actually be in the stands while they filmed one of the scenes.
But
which
is
I
that
thought
to
was
say
interesting.
Major League 2 does not make your list?
No.
All right,
But
but that's a pretty forgettable movie.
Yes.
I did run across it just the other week and
Yes.
watched a little bit. I forgot a lot
But
about
that's
it.
a good side.
Yes.
It's not an awful movie. It's not a top
No.
10 or a top
No.
20.
No.
But yeah, I mean, I just like all the different things about Major League, where you had a guy coming from, he was a convict, and the Wild
That's
thing.
Charlie Sheen,
Yeah, so
by
when you
the way.
think about the Wild thing again, I'll just go back to the Phillies. We had a Wild thing in 1993, and so there's just a lot of things about Major League that I really, really liked. Going with the whole, as you can see, it was the same thing with yours. 3 of my top 5 were baseball. My number 4 was not, I'm sure it's maybe in your list. I had Field of Dreams. Again, I was going by, looking at a lot of lists, and they were, the top of almost every list that you can come up with. And then just looking at this too, and I know we were talking about this. I think one of my trips sometime I would like to take is out to the Field of Dreams.
Well, had there not been a shutdown, there was going to be a Major League game there this year.
Yeah.
What's interesting is, just the sidebar is that there's so many great baseball movies. And I like baseball. We all like baseball. I think we all would agree we probably like basketball more, maybe even football more. But when you look at movies, baseball is it's just Americana. Yeah. And so you're seeing baseball movies are going to turn up all over your list for that reason too. And you're going to get a smattering of Kevin Costner because the guy's done a ton of baseball
I
movies.
was going to say, I don't know what that was all about. I don't know what that was all about. Like if he's just
Well, there's another baseball movie he did. I'll talk about it later. Probably it might show up. Probably won't show up on your list.
Yeah,
but it
so
might show up on mine.
Yeah, so my number 3, as Matt mentioned in his top 5, was Bull Durham. So you mentioned all the good things about it. One thing I would like to mention is, like with the baseball movies, if you haven't watched a lot of baseball movies in the winter time. Go to the MLB Network because obviously they can't show Major League Baseball games. They throw a lot of these movies are on there. So if you haven't really watched them,
and there is a ton of baseball. There's more baseball movies than there are movies about any other.
So
sport.
you could easily flip over to that. So anyway, he talked a lot about Bull Durham. Now my number 2. Again, we'll go with the theme of being from outside of Philadelphia. I picked Rocky. And for me, it was also the series. So I could almost just,
so
I mean,
funny.
maybe it's a violation. I
That's
don't
not a
know
violation.
for, to say it's all of them. But, when I think of the Rockies, as you mentioned, if I come along something, if it's one of the Rockies, I'll flip to it and just kind of see where it's at.
I would say though, if you got stopping on Rocky 5, there's got to be something
No.
better on.
Wow.
Because
I agree with
Rocky's
that.
5 is not.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
But I
And-
meant 1 and 4, especially 4, but definitely 1. When as I started thinking about it and looking at the movie Rocky, like it was, and I think they didn't think it was going to be as good as what it was.
Oh, no.
And just to think about all the things that are in that movie, like you just think, oh, it's Rocky boxing, but there was way less boxing in that.
Well, and that's where we did to get into it because we got to get into it at some point is to say what makes a sports movie, and so Rocky to me is on the fence as a sports movie because there's so limited sports in that movie. Now I'm not boxing is clearly a sport, and there's
I think
stuff
the training part kind of helped that at least. There was,
to me, there's so much more into that you're going to see that Rocky's not making my list because of the fact that it was hard for me to put it as a sports movie, even though some of the other Rocky movies had more boxing in them. And
I think it was also the training part I just mentioned. I think the training part of it, at least there was a bunch of that in there.
I mean, but if we get to that part in Rocky 5 where Rocky goes out for that run in the snow. I'm stopped at 4, not 5, 4.
Yeah.
He goes out for that run in the snow in Russia, and I'm watching that all day.
Well,
I will stop anytime and watch
the other thing
that.
I will mention about that is that to think about, what Sylvester Stallone had to go through at 4. When you think about his body, is just incredible, and the thing about those scenes when he was training in the winter, in that, it's just amazing to me. That this guy was, doing his full actor. Because I mean, think about the guy he fought. Had what, a couple lines, and the guy barely had any lines.
I must break it.
Yeah, so
There you go.
he had like hardly any lines.
If
so
he dies, he dies.
think
Those are
about
pretty much his line.
a lot of the things. So, and then my number 1 as Matt's Hoosiers. The one part I really liked is when near the end of the movie, when they're actually going to and they walk into the stadium. I always said I
For the
wanted to
state
do
title
this.
game. This is for the
This is
state title.
this
Little
was for the
school
state
going for
title.
the state title.
Right, they were going to, which is now
Butler Fieldhouse.
Butler Fieldhouse, where the Butler Bulldogs play. But I've always said that. I mean, I've coached basketball. I didn't have this opportunity to go in that kind of situation, but I think I would love to have did what they did with the coach when they started looking at the stadium.
Huge.
Yes, very huge stadium. So they went over and he had them get the measuring tape and measuring and ask how tall is the basket, 10 feet. And they measured and he said,
Why is from the free throw line.
Yes, and the distance from the free throw line. And then he said, these are the exact same measurements back home at Hickory.
Gym back home.
So, that's just how that really stood out. But I loved Hoosiers as well. So,
All right. So, my top 5 is there's some similarities, believe it or not, and some differences. So, my number 5 was Field of Dreams, and of the Kevin Costner baseball movies, that's definitely the best in my opinion. If you build it, they will come. That again, quotable. Bull Durham, I'm going to tell you, is down on my list pretty far. It's not up there. It's not one of those movies I stop on. But if I stop on Field of Dreams, I can watch it anytime. And there's a lot of stuff in there. James Earl Jones, classic. And there's that part, the part where the daughter falls off of the bleachers and gets the hot dog stuck in her throat, and then young player steps off the field into his old self. That you can't miss that part. So and again, if you build it, he will come. You say that, everyone knows what you're talking about. Yep. So quotables for sure. My number 4 was your number 1, which was Hoosiers. So the one part you didn't mention about Hoosiers, which I can't believe, is when Gene Hackman gets thrown out of the basketball game on purpose and gives Shooter the Shooter, it's your team now, which is the
Dennis Hopper.
Yeah, Dennis Hopper. And a great line from him, identify, when he comes into the woods and in his house and he shoots off the shotgun. Great little part.
He won a Best Supporting Actor for that, I believe.
I did not know that.
I believe. We can look it up, but I believe.
But Hoosiers, great movie. So my number 3 probably isn't on either one of your lists. And it's just one that I just think is a great movie. It's a Kevin Costner movie, And it's about kind of an obscure sport, but one that you should like, Jeff, which is cross country, and it is McFarland.
USA.
So, McFarland USA. If you've never seen this movie, you have got to see it. So, what is it I love about McFarland? So, again, it's a coach, like in Hoosiers, who's out on his luck, who ends up in McFarland, USA, which is in California, which is in this rural area where almost no one goes to college. And this is based on a true story, by the way. It's a true story. And he eventually becomes the coach of the brand new cross-country team that he comes up with, because it's all of Hispanic kids who can run all day. And he sees them do this. He's a football coach. He gets kicked out of being a football coach because head coach didn't like him, and he sees these kids and they can run. And his family, who comes there and they think they're going to eventually move, ends up loving this little small, poor town, and he stays and he takes them to the state title, and they win the state title this first year. And then they show at the end the real guy with the real runners and this real school with like 9 titles in 10 or 13 years or something like that.
Wow.
For cross country. It is a great story. Kevin Costner, well acted, and there's a bunch of other cool stuff in there as well. And it's about this poor school and these poor kids, a small poor kids school, and that tugs at me for a lot of reasons for myself. So I love this movie. Number 2, baseball movie, The Rookie. Not Rookie of the Year, The Rookie with Dennis Quaid, based on another true story, and the guy's name has now escaped me who it's really about, but it's about a guy who, again, coaches in a rural town in Texas, and he makes a bet with his kids and his players, if they can go through and win these games, that he'll go try out, and he at one time played some baseball. He's old, and his arm, he didn't think had it in him, and he's throwing the ball in the 90s, and he eventually gets to the major leagues at the very end of the movie, based on a true story. Just a great movie. It's long. It's about 3 hours, but it's rated G. Anyone can watch it. There's like no movie out there that's rated G. I don't think they were going for a G rating, but it's a great movie. And then my number 1, which made your list as well, A League of Their Own. And I thought about this. Why did that come to mind why was that my number 1? Well, one of the things I did when I was coming up my list is just brainstormed movies and started writing them down. Well, this movie immediately comes to mind for me when I think about sports movies, and it's got so much. We talked about all that. There's no crying in baseball. The heart is what makes it great. Yeah. All those things, and I also love the nostalgia of the movie. It takes place in the 40s during World War II, when girls' baseball had to be played because the guys were all off at war. Gary Marshall, who plays
Mr. Harvey.
Mr. Harvey. And the one line in there that I remember, because it's got the Gary Marshall twang to it for his accent, he talks about the boys are coming back, and he says something like, "The boys coming back from war. We're going to have them go back to the kitchen," because they're talking about the girls' league not making it. But it's based on a true story, and there's this story between the sisters that's really compelling in there as well. And just it's one of those movies that if it's on. And you know what? During the pandemic, we're shooting this, still during the pandemic, it was on TV a bunch, and I must have watched it 10, or at least parts of it, 10 or 15 times when it was on, because I can always watch it when it's on. Yeah. So that's top 5. What else do you got in your top 10? Who wants to go next for top 10?
All right. So for top 10, so should I go from 6 to 10?
Yeah, do it that way.
All right. Let's go 6 to 10 here. Where's my 6? There it is. All right. So my number 6 is Field of Dreams, which you guys talked about. That for me, that was right there with The Natural.
I just got to say, Matt, I don't get The Natural. I don't get it. I've watched it. I don't need to ever see it again. I don't get The Natural. I don't get when you put Field of Dreams up against The Natural. Field of Dreams wins all day. Maybe it's the hokiness of the
Natural. Yes, it's very like where he strikes out the whammer at the beginning off the train or whatever.
I mean, I don't get the whole he got shot and then I don't understand. I don't get it. Yeah. I don't get it. There doesn't seem to be a point to it.
That he got shot and he's able to go back, but then that costs him at the end and everything. Just the whole thing about it. And for me, again, just you have to suspend. Like at the end, I don't want to spoil it or whatever, but
it's been out so long.
Yeah, most people watching this probably saw it or whatever. you know, when he hits the home run and he knocks out the lights and the sparks are falling.
It's a little
down
too
or
hokey
whatever.
for me. I don't
Well,
know.
that's what I said. That's why I said again. You have to suspend belief.
Yes.
Or whatever for it.
Well, I
It's
think a lot
definitely
of
not a real like.
I think a lot of these movies are suspend relief, kind of.
Yeah, well, some of them, but like McFarlane USA.
Right, but I just meant-
and Rookie,
Yeah,
there's
I
a
guess
real
I
stories.
you know, the movies you can see from the ones that I picked,
Yeah.
they were leading more to. I mean,
Like-
Field of Dreams is certainly all fantasy, which is your six
Well,
that you got
I was
talking
gonna
about.
say, well,
you know,
like my major league. I mean, obviously, you're not going to take somebody from the penal.
Well, you never know.
Some guy that was sleeping on it.
there's
The-
a lot of
Yeah.
good quotes
Yes,
in Major
but
League. We
anyway.
didn't
Yeah.
talk about that
So
later.
Field of Dreams, the line that always gets me is at the end where I don't want to spoil it again, but whatever his, you know, you say build it, he will come. He figures out that it's his dad who's passed away, and he didn't have a great relationship with him at the end. And he always said growing up that his dad wanted to have a catch, and he always would not do it. He'd be like, "Oh, I'm busy doing whatever," and that type of thing. And at the end, he says to his dad, "Dad, you want to have a catch?" And that just that's the end of me. when
Well,
that
the
comes
speech
up.
by James Earl Jones is great there
Oh,
too.
baseball marking the time.
Yeah, marches through the time, and then
Yeah.
even in the little girl where she says, "You can do this, Daddy.
Yeah.
They'll come, and they won't even know why."
Yeah.
And you know, and then James Earl Jones they'll hand over their money, and
Yeah.
because what they have is money, and what they don't have is peace of mind or whatever it is. It's better spoken than I can do.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. So my 6 is Field of Dreams. My 7 is Major League. The quote from me from that one is just a bit outside.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what comes to
Yes.
mind for me too.
Bob Uecker, if you don't know who he is, he's actually a real broadcaster playing Harry Doyle.
real baseball player.
Yes.
He's a baseball.
Yes,
player.
and a baseball.
Yeah.
Bob Uecker was a baseball player. The characters, when you said earlier about Major League, that's what comes to my
Right.
mind. You know, Willie Mays Hayes, Pedro Serrano, and Ricky Vaughn or whatever from California Penal. That's
Right.
the league he played in or whatever. So that's what comes to mind. Major League, again, I got stuck watching that. So for me, I wrote down, which is so funny, I wrote down Rocky is my 8, and I wrote down in parentheses behind it, series, because as we've discussed sometimes off camera, Rocky for me is not the best of the Rocky series. Rocky 4, I think we might all agree is that. But for me, if there's no Rocky 4, if there's not a Rocky, and I believe Rocky, which again I'm not sure, I believe Rocky might have won. It was definitely nominated for Best Picture in '76. I believe
think
it might have won it.
And the thing that's crazy about that too, if you don't know some of that story behind Rocky, is Stallone wrote that, and he was broke. He had no money. He was broke.
Yes.
He wrote that. He got offered money for it and returned it down because he wanted to play the starring role, and everyone thought he was nuts.
Yeah.
But he stuck to his guns. This guy that never really wrote a movie before,
And look what it did.
and
for
Yes.
it paid off.
Yeah. Good.
No, go ahead.
Just and the other thing I've written down is one of my favorite characters in that whole series is Paulie.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
Just Paulie, the character. If you watch Rocky, you understand
Yes.
what I'm talking about. So my 9, which I'm guessing is not even on any of your list, maybe not even honorable mention,
We'll see.
is Moneyball.
Oh, it might have made my
yeah.
list, man.
Okay,
I was
I'm
gonna say.
surprised. Okay, so Moneyball for me, it's one of those ones where it's came out maybe in 2011 or so, maybe. So if you don't know what it's about the Oakland A's and them using analytics to create their baseball team and not going out after their big free agents and everything.
that's
And
money,
about
money, yeah.
Moneyball, and it's about Billy Beane, who's a GM of the A's at that time. Let's see what. One of my favorite things. So one of my favorite lines from that is where they end up turning the guy, Scott Hatteberg is the player, I think, end up turning him from a catcher who lost his arm, thrown as a catcher, to a first baseman, and they want to build his character up. So he's at spring training, and then they call him, he's a pick-em machine, whatever, because he's picking the ball. Bad throws from first. His job is to pick them, make sure they're outs or whatever at first. And then my favorite scene in the movie is when they just lost, like, I don't know how many in a row it is or whatever towards the beginning of the season, and he's walking by the locker room after the game, and he hears the loud music, and they're in there dancing around or whatever, and he walks in and just goes off on him, and he says, let's see, do I have it written down here? I just have written down where Billy Beane, Brad Pitt goes into the team locker room, and after losing again, and he just goes off on him, and at the end, he destroys like a Gatorade cooler thing, and he throws some bats and everything. And when everything stops, and then finally there's something's rolling around, it stops, and it's dead silent. He goes, "That's the sound of losing," or whatever. So basically, if you're losing, you shouldn't be
hear it.
celebrating, or whatever. So anyhow, so Moneyball is my 9. I'll move on. I'm taking up too much time here. And my 10, just because we have a Philly connection, as we talked about, is Invincible. So if you don't know, that's a story about Vince Papale making the Eagles back in the 70s, right?
As a tryout.
As a
Just
tryout.
open-
late 70s. Open tryout, something unheard of at the time
Yeah.
and unheard of since.
Yep. So let's see. And there's a scene in that movie. The quote I have is when they finally get things going or whatever, and they're in the old vet, and the assistant coach says to Dick Vermeil, played by Greg Kinnear, he says to him, "That's the sound we've been looking for." Because the fans start cheering. It's because back in the day, you probably won't believe it, but they booed the Eagles big time. Well, I
They were
should
bad
say
at the time.
you do believe it,
Yeah.
but because it's Philly
But
fans.
believe a lot,
they,
yes.
but they were bad, so bad that they booed them
Right.
consistently. And then also what I think of when I think of that movie is the shot of Mark Wahlberg as Vince Papale as a gunner on a punt coverage, going down the sidelines and literally getting knocked off his feet like 4 or 5 feet sideways in the air and crushed like the
I
side.
forget which songs they're playing there, but they're playing some great music
Yes.
during those games too.
Yes.
Very appropriate to the times
Yes.
of the 70s and the early 80s, but yes.
Yeah, so those would come
Yeah.
to mind, and that's just that's a movie where I'm stuck if it's on.
Right.
So,
Oh,
so
yeah.
those are my 6 through 10.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say I have some. Some of those made my honorable mentions as well. But so going with 6 again, this is one of those questionable types of movies to be sports, but it falls under sports. It's Caddyshack. Because of golf, I know, and I'm not even a golfer, but I think because when you think of, just the funny parts of everything. So,
It's hard to go wrong with Caddyshack, and
again,
I
it's,
toyed with putting it on my list a little bit. I will tell you it's an honorable mention, but Caddyshack to me is a comedy movie that has some
Right.
sports
Golf
in it.
element.
Yeah.
right.
But it is an all-time great. Rodney Dangerfield and
Oh yeah.
Bill
Bill
Murray.
Murray, and the whole scene with
Chevy
the candy
Chase.
bar in the
Yeah,
in
in
the
the pool.
in the pool
Yeah.
and Chevy Chase and all
That's
those
why
guys.
it's,
It's a classic.
It's
You
just a
can't go
general
wrong with it.
classic movie.
Ted
Yeah.
McKnight.
Right.
These are going. That's
Ted
going
Knight,
with it. This is the 70s,
Yeah.
guys. So
Yeah.
So anyway, I put Caddyshack as 6. My 7 is also again because we could question it as a sport, but I just really liked the movie, and I guess because when I grew up in the 80s, The Wrestler. I just loved, how they went and showed what it was like in the behind the scenes of those wrestlers, and
That
sitting
was
down-
shot with real
Right.
wrestlers in the real behind the
Right.
scenes, so
Right.
it was very realistic to what
and
they're
we're talking like professional wrestling, not
Right.
like
Yeah, it was
pro wrestling.
the rest is Marissa Tomei and
Right.
now the lead actor in that is escaping me. He plays Whiplash.
Mickey
and-
Rourke.
Mickey
Yeah,
Rourke,
Mickey
yes.
Rourke, who
He
looks
looks-
nothing like Mickey Rourke, used
Yeah,
to look.
yeah.
But yeah,
And
it's
the
a
thing-
very good movie.
And to think about, all the different things, like, how he had to, cut himself and do all the kind of different types of things. And just, I really liked The Wrestler. 8 is, as on your list, was Moneyball. I really liked that movie as well. 9, again, I'm going with all the questionables, and that is Jerry Maguire. Again, thinking about a quote, show me the money.
Everyone knows what that
Everybody
is.
knows that one. And again, that's because, you had your football, but then you had the other side of, the
Sports agent.
sports agent part, and just those kind of which is probably way more so worse things that I'm sure a lot of agents do. But thinking about all the things that the guys did to him, and all that type of thing. But I really loved Jerry Maguire. Again, another movie when I'm on it, I can go flip over to. And then 10. Especially I like watching it when my sons were younger and they played baseball. That's The Sandlot. Again, just a great movie where kids going out and just playing for the joy of the game. And then of course I think of I like collecting things. As you can see, Matt likes collecting things, but I think of a baseball that I might have that was signed. And who knows
Yeah, I'm
when a
thinking
young
of Wendy Heffernan or whatever her name is, the lifeguard.
yeah, but that too. But thinking about them grabbing a ball that was signed, you wouldn't think for someone like me that would be important. Oh, don't take that ball.
And what's the quote from that movie? Come on.
Oh, you're killing me,
Yeah,
Smalls.
Yeah, which is on every
Yeah,
shirt. Right.
which it's interesting, Jeff. I mean, you pick some good movies, questionable
Right.
sports
I
movies.
know.
Right.
Well, I have a lot of
Sandlot,
other.
Sandlot made my honorable mention because it's a questionable sports movie.
A lot of my honorable
just like
mentions are
Caddyshack.
sports.
Yeah,
a lot of my
'cause
honorable mentions are sports ones. So.
Yeah, because I had a hard time putting him into the sports category.
Right.
So my 6 was Invincible. And, again, the Philadelphia connection there actually met Vince Papale at the beach. My wife loves to make fun of me because I tripped over in the sand and fell when I was either going to see him or coming back from seeing him. But I got to meet him. And that story is just a great it's a story of the time of that city, too. Philadelphia was down. There's great music in there, some great football stuff as well. And it's true. To have a guy who's a nobody who, goes to a walk-on tryout with Dick Vermeil, who's a brand new coach. And one of the great lines from that movie, and I'm not going to get it exactly right, but it's after Vince makes the team. It's the first game, and it's that scene, I think, where he goes out and he botches a play, and Vince and Dick Vermeil yells at him like, "I put my neck on the line for you," something like that.
Yeah.
Like, he took a big risk
By
putting this guy on the team. Hey, you better perform.
Right.
And Mark Wahlberg, who's an incredible actor and stuff. So, in the Philadelphia connection, I can watch that anytime.
And the scene where he goes back, he's worried about playing his pro game, and he goes back and plays with his buddies.
Yeah, in the
with
lot part of
you
the
have to
mud.
see the scene in the mud
Yeah.
with the rain and the car lights lighting it up.
Well, and it's a sign of the times, and if you know Philly, there was a bar on every corner in those neighborhoods, and there were, very close-knit neighborhoods, and his buddies were his family.
Yep.
In addition to his family, that's family. You don't let your family down. So there's a lot of that, good stuff in there.
Yep.
7 was Major League, which you guys talked about already. Just a bit outside was, the big line from that too. But there's a number of other lines, and now they're escaping me. It's just that classic movie, though, and it's very baseball oriented, even though it's a great comedy that spurred some not so terrific sequels to it. But all the little pieces that happen in that movie, great.
And when I was researching that movie, I found what was the guy's name? The big guy on the opposing team with the huge mustache.
The big handlebar mustache, the guy from he played in the Yankees.
Yeah.
Right. He was a big first baseman or whatever.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name, character in the movie. He was actually Pete Vukovich. He was a Major League Baseball player. If you look him up on look him up
Pete
a
Vukovich
movie
played
or
for
whatever,
Philly.
he had a Milwaukee Brewers hat on.
Oh.
And he played, I did
Wow.
not know that.
I did not know that either. My number 8, which is definitely a basketball movie, but a lot of comedy and things, is White Men Can't Jump. So this was a movie that came out in the early 90s, and I remember this because the night we went to see it, me and my good buddy went, after the movie, it's now 10, 11 o'clock at night, and we had to go play basketball. So we started at an elementary school playing, and we were, that we shouldn't have been there. So we went to his uncle's house at midnight. We're out back shooting underneath this little, one little dingy light because, we were that inspired, and basketball was our thing. White Men Can't Jump, there's a lot of lines from that. One of the ones I really like is when you're playing outside, you got to adjust for the wind.
Yes.
You might have to adjust 6 to 8 inches from the left to the right. And then another one, Kadeem Hardison says, he thinks they're going to win a
Sizzler.
bet. We go in Sizzler. That's a great line from that movie.
But for those of you who don't know, that's Woody Harrelson, Wesley Snipes. Who's the
Rosie Perez.
Rosie Perez.
Yes.
Yeah.
So great movie. She's trying to get on to Jeopardy. She's
Yes.
studying to get on Jeopardy.
Gotta watch the language.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's not a G-rated movie.
No, that's not a G-rated one. My number 9. It's just a movie that anytime it comes on, I can watch it. It's been on a bunch lately. Sean Astin, Rudy. So I'm not a Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan, but I love the story. Again, it's a similar kind of story to a lot of the movies that you see that I like, where it's the guy or the team. In this case, it's the guy Rudy Rudiger, who is a nobody, who battles his way to finally getting in to Notre Dame, and then battles his way onto the team, and plays on the practice squad, and then contributes so much that he finally gets into one game and gets carried off the field. True story, really happened, and I love that that part of it. I just think that's great. Number 10 on my list was Moneyball, which you mentioned. I think it's a really good movie.
That surprised me. I wasn't sure that would
Yeah.
be on your guys' list. Maybe honorable mention. I just didn't think it would be in your top 10.
I really liked it. Yeah.
I really liked it. I really liked a lot of who's it, Jonah Hill? Is that the
Yep.
statistic guy? And I love the part where Brad Pitt says to him, like, who are you? And he just says, well, I'm just the assistant. No, but who are you? Like, why is he listening to you? Why is he listening to you? And I would like to know if this is true or not, that he traded for him somehow, which I guess you can do. I don't know. But and again, I like the movies that are based on real stories, and I'm not sure what's embellished and what's not there. But Moneyball, great story, and great characters and things as well. So I do have a lot of honorable mentions. I don't know if we want to get into some of those.
We might as well
honorable
start
mentions.
getting into it since we're
guys
been
wanna
going
go?
for a
You want
while.
me to go?
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead, give us some honorable mentions.
All right, so my honorable mentions. Let's see. I have Glory Road. If you know that movie or whatever, that's about I believe it's 1966 Texas Western University basketball team, who was the first starting African American Black five in the national championship game, and they got. I mean, it was a 66, so you can imagine what they went. It's in the movie. You can imagine what they went through on the road, even at home in El Paso and everything. I love that story, not only for the basketball element, but what it means for history as well, or whatever. So, and I was born in 1966, so I think that also has. I shouldn't have said that.
Man,
now,
you're old.
Now you know how old I am, folks. My next honorable mention one is Tin Cup, which is a golf movie, which
Yes.
have Kevin Costner. All I said about Kevin Costner as an athlete.
I had that on my honorable mention as well.
That's just I'm trying to think. I can't think of a line from it or whatever, but just the character he plays, and Cheech Marin in his role as his caddy.
Well, the part where he finishes with just an 8-iron or a 9-iron, and where he's talking to
Don Johnson.
Don Johnson, and he says, "Well, I shot it whatever with just a 9-iron. I never even would have thought of trying that."
Yeah, but that's a movie I love. Tin Cup. Remember the Titans.
Yeah,
If you
that's
guys
a good
have that
one.
in your
Yes,
honorable
that's an
mention,
honorable mention.
that's a classic story. And that was based on a true story as well. Again,
Right here they went to camp in Gettysburg, right?
Did they really?
That's
yeah.
And then they were in Virginia. But
Yes.
they went to their camp where they bonded together was in Gettysburg.
But that's based on a true story
Yes,
as well.
absolutely.
I think I just said that. White Men Can't Jump. I have that. So those are like my top elements of my honorable mentions. And I have some other ones. I don't want to take up too much time. For the Love of the Game, another Kevin Costner
great
baseball
movie.
movie.
Lots of good.
So he plays a pitcher, older pitcher in that. The Rookie I have down in my honorable mention. Coach Carter, which is another basketball movie with Samuel L. Jackson in, where it's sort of down on their luck or down in a poor area of
Richmond.
Oakland.
Richmond.
Well, Richmond. I don't think it's Richmond, Virginia. I think it's Oakland area of Richmond High School in Oakland,
Right.
because they play in the California State Championship or something,
Yes.
or playoffs or whatever. 42. Which is obviously about Jackie Robinson or whatever, and some of it I had no idea until I watched that movie. Some of the stuff that he went through
Oh yeah.
to break the color
It doesn't
barrier.
make the Phillies look good.
No.
But they just took that as a sample because it happened all over the place. I'm sure it
Right.
happened in Philly. It happened
Right.
over lots of places.
Right. The Blind Side.
All right, so I'm going to do my honorable mentions. And there's a few that you guys already mentioned. White Man Can't Jump. I do love the movie. I'm a basketball guy. The Blind Side. I really like. If that movie's on too, that's been on a lot.
Yeah.
But I like flipping over to it. I really like the part. When it gets towards the end, when you think of if you don't know much about college athletics. Where they went into where he had to go in and speak with the NCAA person, and he had no idea why she was bringing up things.
Right.
He was just, and I think that was when you think about today's
very telling.
sports, very, 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 very telling. I really love The Blind Side. Here's a movie I really like too, and you think it's because it's about young kids playing baseball, but you let some of your young students watch it, and that's The Bad News Bears.
The original.
Yes,
Original
yes,
Bad-
yes,
yes.
yes.
It was going to say it
Original,
wasn't
not the
Walter
remake.
The Walter Matthau,
Yes.
Bad News Bears, just great. With all the different things, but yes, there's some language and different
one of the
things
things I
in there.
love about the Bad News Bears, and it's on my honorable mention that is there's a girl pitcher. There's different people. There's the fat kid. There's this kid. There's that.
Nationalities,
There's different
right. Yep.
nationalities that are on the team, and it's a mix of kids. And I think that's the girl pitcher. I played Little League baseball with a girl, and she was one of the best on the team, and it always reminded me of that. So sorry to interrupt, but
No,
that's
great.
that.
So the Bad
there's
News
a lot of good
Bears.
stuff in there.
Now, I had the Invincible on there. I had the 42 because I loved all those. But then I threw a couple more in there because I like the silly sports things. I will watch it all the time too when it's on. Waterboy. I know it's a silly,
Adam Sandler.
Adam Sandler, but I crack up watching different things with it. It's a lot about this college sport of football with and again the eligibility aspect in there, kind of throwing in there. I guess they're going to be remaking this one, Space Jam. I love watching Space Jam. It was Jordan, which I think though was a little questionable that they had, or one of our Philly guys on there is one of the guys they took the power from.
The Monsters,
Sean Bradley. Sean Bradley. I mean, come on. I mean, I don't know how they got him.
See, I couldn't have quoted that because I'll tell you, as much as I love Michael Jordan in basketball at that time, it's not a movie that's really up there on my list of movies. Like I'll pass on by.
So, but another basketball movie I really liked is Uncle Drew. It was again totally far fetched. Obviously, you're young. I mean, if you're an old person and you're in a wheelchair, you're not going to be able to come out and play basketball. But because of all the guys that were in it and classics and all that stuff, I really liked the movie. Going with the whole Rocky theme, the Creed movies were really good movies. I enjoyed those. It was just because it was on the other day when I at least was flipping through. When you talked about The Rookie of the Year, which was a silly movie, but when I watched part of it, that had the Barry Bonds. That was the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Pirate version.
Barry Bonds in there. I'm like, hey, look what he was like like back then.
Yeah.
And then, you look. I would not consider this a sports movie, but but it came up on different sports movies. The Karate Kid because of being, karate.
The final scene is, I just saved you 2 months of beating.
Right.
So because he goes to the,
and obviously that's one of the all time just. I mean, you can always flip over
That's
Karate Kid.
great.
So, but again, iffy for a sports movie.
Iffy for a sports movie. I threw a bunch down on my honorable mentions, a number that you mentioned. But I have a couple on here that you haven't mentioned that you may not have thought of. So I had Tin Cup and Caddyshack and Love of the Game you mentioned with Kevin Costner and Bad News Bears and Remember the Titans in 42 and Sandlot. But here's two that didn't come up on any of your list, and I think they're really quite good. Is We Are Marshall.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Which is about the whole Marshall football team that almost all of them died in a plane crash, and Matthew McConaughey plays the coach that comes in. Great story. You'll see a commonality in my list here, which is the ones that I really like are based on true stories. So there's compelling sports, but there's a compelling storyline there, and I like the history of that. And that was a really good movie. And the other one, which is an interesting movie, and it's based on true fact, and is not good for our area around here, which is Foxcatcher.
Oh, yeah.
So if you've never seen Foxcatcher, it's all about Team Foxcatcher, which is wrestling, real wrestling, not WWE wrestling, and the DuPont, family, and very interesting story. And I didn't know, even though it happened here, it was kind of before I knew too much about what was happening in the world and on the news. Yeah. Very interesting, and a very different part for Steve Carell, who's a comedian who plays John DuPont, who's the main character, who is eclectic and turns out to be crazy. But really interesting, movie, and I don't know. This one I definitely can watch when it's on, and I'm not a big Scholastic wrestling fan, but it goes with my theme of basically a lot of the movies I like, which is based on true fact. I'm a history buff, and I like the history there. So those were a couple, though. The Sandlot's on my honorable mention, and Rocky and 42 and some of those things. But I would the Caddyshats and the Karate Kids and the Sandlots. Those are going to end up on a list if we ever do it, which we probably won't, of just great movies, not as much great sports movies. Interesting. We had some commonalities between our lists and some that weren't. What else do we need to say about sports movies, guys?
I just had three that I wrote down that are ones that may not have been on my honorable mention, but just had elements in them that I thought would be interesting to the audience. Like, take a look at these. They may not be... end up being a great movie that you really were like, I'm glad I watched that movie. But just like Blue Chips, which we all know, with a young Shaq. Like, if you want to know what Shaq looked like, I mean, obviously you can go back and watch him play for the Magic and then LSU and everything. But as an actor, young Shaq and Penny.
And an interesting tidbit that I saw recently about that was that they were They wanted to. The Magic wanted to get Penny. Penny was still in college, and after Shaq played with him in that movie and stuff, he was on board. Like they wanted him on board, and Shaq actually came to them and said, "You need to get this guy."
Right. So that's great. So Blue Chips, Nick Nolte plays really good character in that. He Got Game, which is a basketball movie. I think one of the best character names of all time, Jesus Shuttlesworth, played by Ray Allen.
Allen,
Which, if you are younger and you only know Ray Allen as a member of the Miami Heat, not a member of the Sonics, which we talked about back when we did positions. And Denzel Washington does a great job as his
Good
father.
character in that.
Yep. And then the last one I had was a movie called Above the Rim, which is one I get stuck on every time. That has Tupac in it. Which you know, if you don't know who Tupac is, you guys rap.
You must live under a rock. If you don't know
Yeah.
who Tupac
Well, I know, but if you don't know, like he's actually in the movie. Or whatever. So, and then there's some great music in that film as well. So those are just ones that weren't so much as on my honorable mention as ones that's like, hey, take a look at these, check these out.
I just think, I mean, the big thing I was going to say is that there are just loads and loads and loads and loads of sports movies.
Endless.
And, like, you know, that's why I think there's so much variety of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sports make a great. I mean, you could do a whole top 10 of just baseball movies because I think more than anything, baseball has. There's been more movies made about baseball than anything, and to me, you know, the baseball movies were by and large some of the best made movies that are sports movies.
And I think baseball lends itself to
Yes.
being used in.
Well, it's Americana, it's
Yeah,
nostalgia. You know, there's an endless number of stories to be told with baseball. Not that there probably aren't with other things, but all right. Final words. What was your top movie again, man? Hoosiers.
Same thing with mine.
Hoosiers. Mine was League of Their Own. Hoosiers was 4 for me. So, again, guys, you have been listening to and watching the Two Matts and a Jeff podcast. We hope that you have enjoyed it. We hope that you will subscribe and like our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook and on Instagram. We'll see you next time.